Welcome to episode 23 of 22 Man Game with Jared and Dame. I'm Jared, that's Damon, and we are coming at you a bit of a different day, bit of a different time. It is Friday, January 16th at 4:52 p.m. late afternoon Fridays. The energy's going to be crazy at the end of the week. How are you doing, Damon?
Oh, thanks for asking, Jared. I'm doing better. The reason we're coming later in the week is because I had what I think was the flu. That's what they told me. That's what they gave me medicine for. And I was basically out of commission until Wednesday, and even Wednesday I was barely in commission, and then yesterday it was like kind of normal, and today's pretty normal. So we're firing it back up, talking about the wild card, the upcoming divisional this weekend, all that jazz. How are you, Mr. Jared?
I'm good. I was gonna set up a joke where I said nothing happened this last week in the world of football, but it's as you said, we already had wild card weekend and the coaching news crazy as well. I do wanna share. It's not visible because of my wide, muscular frame here, but I did get a Christmas gift from Damon in the form of this Lego Lions football.
It's looking
Um,
great.
it is looking sharp. It is looking very sharp. And honestly, it was pretty manageable build. I was worried when it's a lot of small pieces, but layering it together, honestly, pretty fun experience and a perfect thing to do with my hands while watching Wildcard Weekend football, which was a blast from start to finish. The only game I unfortunately wasn't able to get my eyes on was Panthers Rams because I was at work. Every other game, though, I was glued. Someone spilled Elmer's on the couch. I mean, it was can't miss.
Awesome. Yeah, I would say for the most part, it was a very good weekend. But before we get to that, because I do have a couple of things I want to say, we got some news on the docket first. And here's what I'll say about this news, because this is all front office coaching related. This is obviously the first year I've followed football this closely in terms of kind of these off-season-esque stuff already happening. And I think it's weird in the NFL, and I don't like the NBA doesn't do this, I don't think. And then other sports, I don't know. But I don't I think it's weird that teams basically do like a social media post for every person they interview. It's like Blake and Blake has just interviewed Antonio Pierce for their head coach position. It's like, oh, all right, cool. It's like that is a weird choice. So what if you just waited until you said, "Here's who we hired"? Um, I don't know. It's strange because it feels like I don't know if you're a casual fan, you come across a post and you see your team has posted the face of like some coordinator. You're like, oh, like we must have hired this guy. It's like no, it just says like head coach interview. It's like okay, cool.
Yeah, it is a little strange too because I was reading about obviously the Lions searching for an offensive coordinator. We were looking for both coordinator positions last offseason, and Dan Campbell said something to the effect of, "Yeah, I talked to like 20 guys, and maybe three of those got like a tweet."
hmm
And so it's a little strange that some candidates get the tweet, some candidates don't get the tweet. Depends on the level of coaching. Like just a little odd. That some of them go acknowledged or unacknowledged. I do think the transparency is kind of interesting and it allows people who are following the team to engage in a conversation about, who's doing what. I just, I maybe wish it was a little more standardized. Like if we're going to do it, you have to do it for everybody, or you don't have to do it for anybody, or you only do it for head coaches or something like that. Just a little odd.
Yeah, it was strange for sure. Um, let's talk about some moves though that occurred. Why don't we? Starting with the Buccaneers firing everybody. Their offensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, QB coach, cornerback coach, and defensive line coach. It's a lot of firings. I guess they really petered out after their hot start, lost the division, didn't make the playoffs, and now here they are, looking for an array of new things under head coach Todd Bowles.
Yeah, there was some rumoring, some discussion. Will they move on from Todd Bowles or won't they? I wonder if shaking up the defensive staff was part of that, reformation to say, hey, I understand my end of the ball didn't necessarily hold up the bargain, right? Because Todd Bowles really is a defensive guy first. So we're
Yeah.
going to move on from some guys. I also, unless I'm mistaken, I believe the Lions hired their defensive line coach after his contract expired last year. So it's another position in addition to offensive coordinator that's gotten a lot of turnover. This is their fifth offensive coordinator they're going after in 5 years. And the last few, uh, actually, the previous two coordinators before Josh Grizzard, who was the fired offensive coordinator, just played in Wildcard weekend. The Jaguars head coach Liam Cohen and Panthers head coach Dave Canales. So there
Yeah.
has been a lot of success at that position. It's been a pipeline for a lot of head coaches, and that's somewhat changed this year. And hopefully they can find someone to bring their offense and their decent cupboard of weapons back to relevance. Although a lot of their receivers are aging.
Yeah, but they got plenty of them, and they got a Gbuka as the young guy, so we will see. I finally felt justice, Jared. Justice for me after you
Mm,
clowned me last week
I did.
um, on the podcast because I kept making the Mike McDaniel getting fired joke and he never got fired. And then he did get fired. He's gone. He's out of Miami. Um, they fired him. They did hire Packers Vice President of Player Personnel, John Eric Sullivan, as their new general manager. This is with the Troy Aikman consolation, and he is also doing that for their head coach position too. Makes sense getting the new GM and then kind of letting him and I guess Troy Aikman come up with who their next head coach is going to be. A lot of interesting decisions for this team this offseason, not only in the front office, but what they're going to do with some of their players too. Tua obviously comes to mind, but even guys like Tyreek, who had a pretty catastrophic injury to end his season and stuff like that. So interesting decisions ahead for the Dolphins here.
This seems like a prime tear it down, start over a little bit team to me.
Hmm.
I don't think Tua has a ton of trade value. I think you're probably going to have to eat an ungodly amount of dead cap. I think Tyreek is no longer a piece that makes sense on a team that is completely hitting the reset button. So, going to be interesting to see where they go at quarterback and whether they lean fully into the tank, try to keep themselves at a wild card level. I don't see a pathway for the Dolphins to stay in that wild card adjacent realm that they had been in the years prior to this one. So interesting nonetheless for them, and I think they're going to be competitive for a lot of solid coaches, despite having a less certain quarterback situation than some of these other teams that are looking for a guy.
Yeah, I don't know how much this plays into like front office personnel. I'm sure it does a little bit, but like Miami are probably one of the more desired places to live
Hmm.
um, when coaching in the NFL.
Yeah, no doubt. On the news, on the executive news, by the way, I just want to slip in here that the Falcons officially hired Matt Ryan to be their
Mm,
president of football.
we did talk about that rumor.
Yes,
Yeah,
that has been locked down now. They'd interviewed a few folks, and he is now locked down as president of football, which is interesting. If I'm not mistaken, I think I was listening to Heed the Call. Someone might have been talking about how they have separate search firms for the general manager and head coach position, which is kind of a strange approach to,
hmm
you'd think if you trusted one or the other of the search firms, they would maybe just go that way. But either way, interesting to see another former quarterback splitting themselves between being a TV personality and an executive.
Yeah. Well, I believe if I'm not mistaken, he has given up his CBS position in order to take on this job
Interesting.
as an analyst. There was a whole statement about it that I briefly read, but um, yeah, I don't think he's allowed to do both.
So he is leaving CBS. Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, if Tom Brady can both own the Raiders and um, call football games, then it feels like anything would be possible. But
Yeah. Um, Well, that's two different sides of the 28-3 Super Bowl comeback. So when you're
That's
on the Tom
true.
Brady side of it, you're you're allowed to do whatever you want, I guess.
That is fair. That is fair. Man, poor
And I
Matt. That would have been a
guess
nice.
like in a a real way to address what you're saying, I think being the president of football is more like stuff you actually have to do. Like you have
Yeah.
to, and then being an owner, because he's not even like he's not the majority owner, right? Isn't he?
No, he's a minority owner. Yeah.
He's a minority owner, so it's like, at most he's like signing things probably, but he's probably not super involved in like a lot of the football decisions and things like that.
Yeah. I also imagine the time obligation for being president of football is probably much higher than being an owner who can step in and step out as he chooses. So,
Right.
fair enough. But an interesting promotion for the Falcons nonetheless. And I wonder whether we're going to see more recent former players get directly involved in managing the kind of structure and the front office side of teams. I feel like that doesn't happen quite as often in the NFL on the general manager half or the president of football half. So
And when it does, it's people I've never heard of. It's like, oh yeah, that guy was a linebacker for this team. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
cool. Yeah. All right. It's great. Yeah. That's I believe it. Well, when it's like, oh, he was like a backup linebacker from 2003 to 2006, I'm like,
Right.
oh, great, awesome. I haven't heard of him, but he sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a big
Anyway,
difference with like when basketball players get involved because it's like, okay, I know who that is, but like football, there's so many guys that kind of just go under the radar. So if they're not like a guy, I don't even realize that they were like a former player.
yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely too. I think that is a big part of it. Also, is if you aren't one of the top 5 to 10 guys on a football team, you're likely not going to be at the top of other people's minds unless they spent a stint on your favorite team. Whereas, basketball, any 5 guys can get out there any night. So,
Yeah.
speaking of former players, look at this winning transition right here. The Commanders
Mm.
have replaced Cliff Kingsbury at offensive coordinator with recently retired quarterback and former quarterbacks coach David Blau. He has stepped in to be the offensive coordinator at, I believe, only 30 years old. He spent about a year and 3 quarters as their assistant QB coach, and then he stepped into the QB coach role for the last month of the season after their QB coach left for a collegiate position, and now has rapidly been promoted to offensive coordinator. But there was demand as the Lions had tried to get an interview with Blau before he was promoted by the Commanders.
Yeah. We'll see. It's very young, but obviously, if he's already worked with the team closely, they probably liked what he had been bringing to the table. So, wish nothing but the best for some success over there. They could use a little bit of a turnaround after the season they just had.
Yeah, no, they could use probably a fresh set of eyes, and obviously the quarterback room has helped develop Jaden Daniels, who's been an almost instant star. So you would hope that that's at least due in part to having some brain power in the room. Damon, last thing here before we hop into the games. Last week there were 7 head coach openings. This week there are 8 currently, and that's because one of them's been filled. Damon, who was the first coach off the board in the 2026 offseason?
That would be dun dun John Harbaugh, hired by the Giants to be their next head coach. I thought this was probably, the top name right on the quote unquote coaching market. Obviously, such tenure with the Ravens, did win a Super Bowl. Has been what, 12 years, 13 years since that Super Bowl, but um a Super Bowl victor nonetheless. Obviously, a lot of success regular season wise with the teams as well. And yeah, just a good reputation. At the time of his firing, was the second longest tenured coach in the league. We'll talk about the longest tenured because he's now also gone when we get there. Um, and yeah, I mean this makes sense for any number of teams wanting to kind of get some stability, and I think the Giants are an organization that have kind of needed that really since Tom Coughlin and kind of their Super Bowl era was there for a while. But since then, they've had what Pat Shermer, Joe Judge, Brian Daboll, and they're kind of just going through guys. Um, so. Yeah, this makes sense to me. I saw a lot of like weird negative press about it. I think people like because people were excited if they were, a Giants fan, or for the Giants, which I think is fair. But people are like, oh, like this guy hasn't won in the playoffs recently, and your team is still really young, and I don't think anyone is trying to. I think you could be excited about this without being like, the Giants are going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think they maybe the analogous hire here would be the Raiders bringing in Pete Carroll in terms of intent, right? Get a veteran head coach who had a mild decline in success with their prior team, but a long-standing history of success in the league and a great pedigree in the league. And Harbaugh's younger, obviously. That said, he's still 63 years old, so it makes you wonder how long is he going to hold this job, right? Probably, I don't know how old the oldest head coach ever was. I thought it was Pete, who is, 74. So does he hold this role for, 8 to 10 years and then they pass it on after they've stabilized the culture and brought in coordinators who are worthy of promotion, that kind of thing. A lot of rumors I've seen online that Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator for the Ravens last year, will follow him to the Giants. But if you are a fan of a team that has been truly listless, Harbaugh is one of those guys that you feel really good about bringing in to stabilize things. Yeah, he's not necessarily flashy in a way. He's not like the new coordinator who's going to come on the scene and blow everyone's minds, but I think he's going to bring a lot of consistent leadership and competence to an organization that has been devoid of competence for many moons. So,
For sure. Yeah, I'm excited to see where this team goes next year. I know their record. What do they have? The number 5 pick because they won at the end of the year, but there's definitely some flashes for guys started going out with injuries. So we'll see.
yeah, Dart certainly offers something at quarterback that I think an opening like the Cardinals or the Dolphins or the Browns really can't match. So, definitely some upside to this team. But we need to move on to the playoffs themselves. We're talking about next season and seasons beyond. This season is far from over. We had the first round of the playoffs last weekend, and if you were watching, boy, were 4 out of these 6 games an absolute treat, and then the last two also transpired. We're not doing any like glad, sad, happy, crappy games this week. They all matter. This is the playoffs, baby. They
Oh
all
yeah,
count, and this is probably the most banger dense week of playoff games, that I can remember in a while, excluding like considering it's the wild card weekend, most of the wild card weekends have a couple like total snoozers, and really only one of these games felt truly over. Before kind of late in the fourth quarter, I would say they were still relatively within reach. So, really exciting stuff.
oh yeah. And I will say, for my own purposes, six for six on my predictions for Wild Card Weekend, baby. Every team that I predicted to emerge victorious did.
I did not track my predictions, so I assume I was probably closer to 3 for 6. Um,
I feel like we were in sync on a lot of. I feel like we'll go game by game, but I think maybe 2 of them I can remember that you picked opposite of me.
I think this first one was probably one of them because I really wanted to think wishfully. Uh,
Oh, well, if that's the case, then it's not one of the 2 I was thinking of.
I don't
Um,
did I don't know. I feel like in this first game, the first game of Wild Card Weekend, Rams Panthers,
yeah,
I was hoping that the team who beat the Rams would repeat their fate
you did
in
say that. I remember
Carolina.
that.
The
Yeah.
division winning 4 seed Panthers hosting the 5 seed Rams. Early on, it looked like the Panthers were going to reveal themselves to be a mirage, but instead, the Rams suddenly found themselves on the ropes late in this game, and a late Matthew Stafford dart is what it took to overcome a scrappy Panthers team who gave the Rams all they could handle in a 34-31 shootout, showdown. matchup that I think exceeded most rational football viewers' highest hopes for the competitiveness of this contest.
Yeah, for sure. I thought the Rams were gonna kind of wax the Panthers here, get their heads on straight for this playoff run. And it was close pretty much all throughout. I enjoyed that the Panthers kind of kept fighting back. They were down pretty much the whole game until the end when they suddenly came up, and then the Rams, like you said, had to make that last minute drive to ultimately emerge victorious. But they were constantly fighting, and at home helps for sure. I think Bryce Young had moments like if you look at his stat sheet, 21 for 40 is not impressive, barely 50% pass completion. But he had some throws in there that were super crucial and super important. He also had a really nice, I remember, scramble that was like kind of a desperation, like we need to get this first down kind of thing, running like a true blue man, and juked the heck out of a Rams linebacker. I think he ended up getting a touchdown on that scramble, if I remember correctly. Um, which is really nice to see. You saw randomly Jalen Coker was like absolutely balling in the secondary for them. He's a receiver, but balling on the Rams secondary rather. Which is so surprising because they just drafted Tedero McMillan. Obviously, they had Leggett in the first round last year. Coker also drafted last year. Hadn't really done anything, so for him to show up in this playoff game was pretty huge for them. Weirdly enough, there was not a lot of Rico Daddle in this game. It was pretty much Chuba most of the time that I was watching. Thought that was strange. Ultimately, what it, kind of like what I took away from this is if you're a team like the Panthers, despite being at home against this Rams team that I think a lot of people are still kind of picking as a Super Bowl, contender because they had a really strong season, a couple tough losses, ended up slipping away their chance at the 1 seed, but they're obviously a strong, strong wild card team. And ultimately, I think the Panthers had a couple of hiccups that led them to lose this game because the Rams are not a team that you can make those mistakes against because they'll make you pay for it. The one that comes to mind for me was Trevor Etienne muffed a punt uh,
Mm.
quite badly, and then the Rams recovered the ball and they had it on like the 15-yard line or something like that. So little errors like that. There was a couple of those. Bryce Young had a pick in this game that was kind of like that. But just like inopportune times for some of these plays, and I think ultimately, awarded the Rams at the last moment to be able to take a win away. But obviously, a gritty game for the Panthers to come out and put up 31 on this Rams team. Um, and yeah, I think they can kind of go into the offseason, a little bit with their head on their head held high on their shoulders because they played a good last game here.
Yeah, the NFL playoffs don't necessarily have. I feel like when I read about the NBA, a lot of teams talk about or commentators talk about you want to get your young guys that playoff experience, and then hopefully, they come back next year and they use that experience to go further. I think the NFL has a lot of variance in that regard, but if you're Dave Canales and you intend to get this team back to the playoffs, you'll be glad to have had guys who now at least have one of these games under their belt. I don't think the Panthers have been to the playoffs since most of these players joined the team, so it's nice to kind of start to rebuild that winning culture for them and give us a really exciting result in the process. I personally, obviously, I didn't necessarily have eyes on this game, but I think the Rams little dubious, might be a little dubious. We'll talk about their coming matchup, but first to get a preview of their opponent, Damon. What was the NFC North matchup this wild card weekend that took the world by storm?
Yeah, so I'm watching late in the third quarter as the Packers are up 21-3 on the Bears. And I was like, "Oh, brother, to be the 2 seed and then fall like this, so sad, huh?" And then, you know, overcoming all odds, the Bears put up 25 points in the fourth quarter alone to overcome the Packers and mount this insane comeback. Um, which I think a couple of people will point to certain things here and there, but it was super improbable. Caleb Williams was doing the thing where he makes throws that make absolutely no sense for most people to even attempt, on the run across his body, things like that. And then the Packers, they had a really good game plan to start the game. They put up 21 before halftime, and I think people kind of correctly pointed out that Matt LaFleur then kind of uh, changed their play style to be a lot more conservative and just try to kind of get to the end. And it came back to bite them because they kind of lost all their momentum that they had built throughout the game, weren't able to overcome the Bears team. And I mean, you look at Jordan Love, he passes 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, and then they lose. It's kind of unfortunate for him. Um, I already mentioned Caleb Williams, but the kicker, Brandon McManus for the Packers, also missed a couple of field goals. He missed an extra point, which didn't allow the Packers to just go for a field goal to tie it at the end. They had to go for a touchdown. Last play of the game ultimately ends up being a goal line incompletion for the Packers, and they lose. It was just this insane kind of, one of those win probability stats where like the Packers were at like 80, 90% late in the third, and then even in a lot of the fourth, and then it suddenly flipped at the very last second. Oh, the Bears win. And it was just a wild game ultimately, in which the Packers blew this huge lead because they started playing very conservative, stopped trying to really go for points and stuff. And you can blame some of that, I think, on the coaching, the game plan, blame some of it on the kicking, like I mentioned. Um, but also, like 25 points in the fourth quarter, you got to blame some of it on the defense too, not being able to stop the Bears at all at that point in the game when they had shut them down pretty effectively in the first half.
Yeah, the Bears just have this can't die gene in them. There's something about them this season that makes them seemingly invulnerable in the fourth quarter as they continue to rumble back. As I may or may not have stated, but most likely did last week, the result I am seeking is for Ben Johnson's elimination to take place because if Ben Johnson gets to the Super Bowl, I actually will never hear the end of it, ever. So I I just I hate having to pull for the Packers. Packers were doing their work, and then the Bears somehow come back again. And I think the fact that the Packers are missing so many kicks, it just goes to show that like the Bears are winning in part because the teams they're playing are losing, right? Like there's this sort of synchronicity there. And on the one hand, it really makes me feel like this Bears team could still be a fraud, right? And the Packers were just a slightly bigger fraud. Uh, but on the other hand, the Rams allowing the Panthers back in, God, if you open the door for the Bears, they're gonna, bowl in a china shop to reference another Chicago team, and absolutely, run you over if you give them a window. So I would love to see some creative play calling from Sean McVay to overwhelm the Bears defense early and then continue to put the pressure on with their running back tandem of Kyron Williams and Blake Corum in the upcoming game, which is Rams at Bears. But I don't know. The Bears either way will be without linebacker TJ Edwards, who left with a fractured fibula, so missing a key defensive leader in the middle of their defense. But yeah, there is a bizarre energy around the Bears, and it still feels like the door is going to get slammed on them at some point. It just may not be nearly as soon as we expect.
Yeah, I would say they don't feel still like an incredibly real contender. I mean, they were down by multiple touchdowns against ultimately the 7 seed Packers. And the Bears were the 2 seed, so that isn't a good look in itself. I know Ben Johnson caught a little bit of flack because he has been having these very viral filmed post game interview locker room things. This time he said "fuck the Packers,"
Yeah.
which was funny. And then he was asked about it, and he was like, "Well, it's a long-term rivalry. That's how I feel." And then he said something like, "The owner also feels this way and doesn't care." And I was like, "Okay, that's cool, I guess."
It's such a volatile mindset though, right? Because if you come out and you're trashing the opponent Like the second you get knocked on your butt, you are going to get stomped over by every other team, right? To me, it feels like a bit of a glass cannon potentially in terms of the persona you've adopted as a team. But um, I've actually never guided a team to an NFC wildcard win, so I suppose I'm not allowed to say anything. Uh, let's move on to what may have been. I would say Bears Packers was probably number one of the games I watched, but not far behind in terms of entertainment value and just sheer battling. Said a lot about Liam Cohen and the Jaguars. Not crazy about James Gladstone. Not crazy about their team overall. Happy for our Jags fan in the comments that they had such a successful season. With the Bills coming to town, it really felt like it could go either way. But Josh Allen, who truly does have the energy of some manner of immortal chiseled god, refused to let their team vanish in the night against a Jaguars team that played a really complete game. Both sides absolutely doing their best. Jaguars getting Cam Little into position for a massive boot at the end of the second quarter. Just really high level stuff on both sides there. Um, Even though that kick ends up going on to be missed, it just felt like a game where every team was playing to its maximum, which I always love to see. But in the end, it was the truly elite nature of Josh Allen that broke the tie between two really talented and driven teams to give the Bills the road win 27-24. A really close matchup that I truly do think was decided by Josh Allen's singular football talent as an X factor.
Yeah, and they just couldn't really do anything to stop his rushing ability. I mean, he's a huge guy that has rushed a lot in his NFL career. And right before ends up scoring the go-ahead touchdown late in this game, he had like essentially a tush push that turned into like a 12-yard run to put him right on the 1 yard line because he just kept pushing and getting pushed by his offensive line. And there's just nothing they could really do to contain him. But yeah, I think I kind of was pretty low on the Jaguars as a long-term contender. I think they capitalized on a relatively weak division for a lot of the year. I know the Colts were really hot at the start. The Texans went hot late. But both of those teams had also had spells of being pretty miserable at points in the season. Um, and the Jaguars were kind of consistently good enough. And I felt like a team with the experience of the Bills could have brought their season to an end, and that's ultimately what occurred. But can't be too mad. Obviously, didn't have Travis Hunter. He's out for the season. They're in the number two pick that you traded a bunch of stuff for. And going into the next season, you'll theoretically be healthier. I think I'm interested to see what they're going to do with this passing attack because Parker Washington was probably their most impressive receiver in this playoff game. And he's had times in this season where he's been good. So him, Travis Hunter, Jacoby Myers, they just gave an extension to, um, and Brian Thomas Jr. That's four receivers. I wonder kind of what the pecking order of that's going to look like next year. So I mean, Travis Hunter will play more on defense instead of as a receiver. Things like that are kind of what I'm ultimately curious of, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the interesting thing with the whole Travis Hunter conversation is, yeah, if he's a top five receiver and a top 10 corner, of course you play him at both positions. But all of a sudden, you've got a guy in Brian Thomas Jr. who took a step back this year, but still very talented. And you've got a guy you really like in Jacoby Myers. Do you really want to wear down your second corner by having him also play wide receiver as the third guy? Do you bring him out in the gadget packages? When a guy's talent isn't undeniable, it becomes much more difficult to know how to utilize him. I will say, by the way, for the Bills coming into next week, wide receiver Tyrell Shavers will be out, apparently playing on a torn ACL in this game, which is
Oh wow!
crazy. They
But they're
also will
bringing
not
back
have.
Curtis Samuel.
Um, well, I mean that's all it takes. They also will not have safety Jordan Poyer, who I believe injured himself last week. Per what is this website? buffalodown.com. I guess
Ah,
that's
of course.
the famed reputable source, Buffalo Down. But I will say, for Survivor fans in the chat here, they did a season Exile Island where all the eliminated players in the first half could choose to stay and fight for an opportunity at the kind of mid-season point to come back on the show, which was awesome and a great mechanic. And if I could like Exile Island one team back into this playoffs, because it is a pretty good field overall, I would like to see the Jaguars play another game. I think they offered a lot. They were clearly motivated. And if the Texans happened to win the division and they had played the Steelers instead, I think we would still be looking at Jaguars football going into
hmm
next week.
hmm I agree with that. How about the most dreaded game of the week for probably both of us?
Yes.
The 49ers end up triumphing? Is that a word? Um,
Triumphing over. Wait.
yeah,
Yeah, I
okay.
guess it is, but
I
it
said
just
it and I
looks
was like,
better
that
than it
sounds
sounds.
weird. Yeah.
I feel like you
Over
would say
the
the
Eagles.
49ers triumphed over, but like,
Triumphed over, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't
Uh,
know. Weird. Anyway.
over the Eagles, 23 to 19, in a game that I feel like I saw coming from a mile away, and I already know I mentioned that I got it all right, which makes me happy because it's the first playoffs of our podcast, and I managed to go 6 for 6. But the Eagles just, so clearly looked to be underperforming basically all season, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And the 49ers, despite constant injuries and changing of the lineups and stuff, managed to win a lot of the year. And I just thought they looked like a better team most of the time. The Eagles, they won a lot of close games. They won a lot of games against lesser opponents. They played in a very weak division with all the disaster that happened to the Commanders. The Giants, of course, still rebuilding. The Cowboys not playing defense for half the year. Um, so yeah, they end up, kind of coming in as a division winner, but they didn't look like that Super Bowl team last year, and the 49ers just seem to have a little bit of magic, and they had enough magic to ultimately bring out this game when the Eagles offense again looked bad. So and that, was addressed by, I believe, head coach Nick Sirianni is the one that kind of released a statement. Like, I talked to Kevin Patullo, their former offensive coordinator, and was like, yeah, it's not going to work. And now he's out after one season. They will also be looking for their fifth offensive coordinator in 5 years, two of which are now head coaches, Shane Steichen in Indianapolis, Kellen Moore down in New Orleans. So, um, just like the Bucks, they've had some success there. This didn't seem to be that. Um, AJ Brown, a guy that has complained a lot this season about his usage and lack thereof for their offense, had a couple of big drops in this game on hard catches. He's getting hit and stuff, but the ball was hitting his hands at the very least, and one or two of those catches that he makes, maybe it's a different game. I'm not sure. Um, because it was pretty close throughout. And yeah, the 49ers score with 3 minutes left, touchdown, and then that's pretty much it. Eagles managed to not mount any sort of comeback from there. But yeah, the 49er magic continues on. The Eagles offense not looking great. Yeah, it finally kind of happened in a game that mattered. And now they're going home, and we will have neither repeating team in last year's Super Bowl, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, I feel like I saw rumblings that Patullo may return in the kind of pass game coordinator role he had. What I'd heard through a lot of the season, just listening to podcasts and such, is he was really tight with Sirianni, is kind of like, someone he felt really confident communicating with, is sort of, his guy, and then obviously puts him in the OC position, doesn't work out. Um, it's the oft-stated fact, like Jalen Hurts hasn't had the same offensive coordinator 2 years in a row since college, but that continues here.
hmm
Uh, I think they needed to move on. The biggest, I think, sore thumb in this game was absolutely watching the connection between Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown fail the team multiple times in high leverage situations, and when you're unable to take who should be your best receiver and have them make the plays you need them to make in those moments. Yeah, something's just not working. The Niners lost George Kittle to a torn Achilles in this game. He's fist bumping and pumping up the crowd as he leaves, and um, definitely a huge loss for them. He's core to the identity of this team and in the national consciousness for years, and obviously he's a great tight end as well. So this is a substantive loss for the Niners, and I think nonetheless they've proven that they have a hard-earned resilience with all of their myriad injuries that nonetheless makes them an interesting team to follow going into their matchup against the Seahawks next week, which we'll talk about. I am If one of these teams had to win, I wanted it to be the Niners, and so I am at peace with this result. I think the Eagles soak up a lot of airtime and not in a great way. And yeah, they neither Super Bowl appearing team will be returning this year. It's going to feel, I think, a little more fresh than it has in years past with a lot of Chiefs and then rotating between teams like the Eagles. But we're gonna get a team that has not been back to the bowl in a while. I mean, maybe the Niners or Rams, if they go, okay, maybe that's kind of recent, but especially on the AFC side, we're going to get a team uh, that we haven't seen in, probably since the Patriots were on in their last Super Bowl. So
Yeah. Do you know who the Niners leading receiver in this game was?
was it like Jake Tonjes or something?
It was not Jake Tonges. He had one catch for 14 yards. It was Demarcus Robinson, who was like also barely played most of the season. Six catches for 111 yards.
Hey, that's a crazy amount for him to have gotten. Wow. Good for him. I mean, that's the thing about the Niners is they just do have those
Just
guys who
guys.
keep stepping up. Yeah, they are like number four wide receiver merchants who like turn into number two wide receivers when you need them to.
Yeah.
Uh, kind of
What
crazy.
about their leading tackler? You have any clue who that would be? Somebody
Um,
that we brought up a long time ago, signed on to the team like halfway through the season.
Halfway through the season, signed onto the team. Was it like
Basically coming out of retirement, I think.
coming out of retirement?
Unless he was playing somewhere, but I thought he was basically done. Let me look. Former Viking.
Former Viking. Oh, it wasn't like Eric Kendricks or something, was it?
It was Eric Kendricks.
Let's go. Let's go. Oh, that's
Yeah.
crazy, man. I mean, truly, it is a testament to the coaching of the Niners that they are able to keep their head above water in these games. I give them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. In November, he was signed to their practice squad. In January 7th, he was added to their active roster.
So
So,
before this game, he joins the
yeah.
active roster and then becomes their leader. Hey, man, um,
It's the
that
Niner
is awesome.
way.
Yeah. Um, all right, let's power through these next two games because these were
All right. The
um
snoozers.
the snoozers, the snoozers. Chargers at Patriots had all of the promise of an elite defense finally meeting this Patriots team that has been walking through a soft schedule all season. So did the Chargers put it to the Patriots? Absolutely not. They walked in, looked around, said, "Man, it's great to be here. Time for us to go." Put up 3 points to look alive, and then ended up losing a 16-3 match that did not feel terribly close. Their offense could find no momentum. Their most consistent weapon was Justin Herbert's legs, which can
Hmm.
be a difference making element, but should not be the defining element of an offense.
Yeah.
Instead, it was the only functional element of the offense, especially in that second half. Um, as Drake May was able to make drive extending plays when they needed to. And even though they weren't coming away with a ton of points, obviously 16 is not a mind-boggling number of points, especially with a Chargers team that wasn't putting up a lot of points themselves. But it was more than enough. They got that last score late in the game there and were able to just pull away. And it cost the Chargers offensive coordinator Greg Roman, formerly OC under John Harbaugh in Baltimore, his job. So the Chargers now looking for an offensive coordinator replacement for Greg Roman.
Yeah, this makes sense to me. I mean, 16 points, you said not a lot, but I think if you're a Chargers defender, you have to ultimately be happy with that. Like this number two seed, who, like you said, kind of walked through the regular season pretty easily, holding them to 16, especially when their offense, like, not only do they only give you 3 points, but they had like 200 yards of offense in the whole game. So the defense was on the field a lot.
Yeah.
And usually when that's the case, you get worn out, and then you start giving up more and more towards the end of the game because you're just tired. But they held their own pretty well. If I were walking out of there as the defensive coordinator, I'd be like, we held them to 16. Like, that's, come on, we should be able to do something here. Um, but yeah, with the weapons they have, Justin Herbert still kind of dealing with that nagging hand injury on his non-throwing hand. Um, Hampton was playing this game. They have Ladd, they have Keenan. They drafted Trey Harris. They utilized him a little bit. Quentin Johnston. Like, there's so many weapons on that offense, and it just feels like all season. At the start of the season, it was like whose night everyone's hot, and then like the second half of the season, it was like, okay, all these weapons, and we're not gonna use any of them. Actually, we're gonna do nothing instead. Um, so
Hey,
yeah,
anyone
the
want more
offensive change makes
Oronde
sense.
Gadsden touches? That was really the
Right.
like
Right.
um yeah, sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
But yeah, their offensive line injuries, it's
That's
really
yeah, fair.
strange for these teams when they're able to get through the regular season and then suddenly the playoffs come and it's like they were caught with their pants down. Like they've had
Hmm.
this injury problem all year. Suddenly they enter the playoffs and it all melts away. So yeah, disappointing end for the Chargers there. It's one of those things where I really don't blame Herbert, right? I don't know what more he could have
No,
done. Um,
just constantly pressured.
yeah, still looking for that first playoff win for Herbert, if I'm not mistaken. So, he can hopefully get that under his belt. And obviously, not having their two tackles from pretty much jump was really difficult for this team to overcome over the course of the season. But expect a little more fight. I think Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter feels pretty locked in to be a head coach unless he doesn't want to be in this
He's
cycle.
getting
So,
head coach interview post. I've seen
oh, he's holding the play sheet,
him.
in those little graphics there, I'm sure. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
I could totally see him landing. I mean, to me, he feels like doesn't it just feel like the Cardinals? I saw the Cardinals linked to Vance Joseph, and I was like, man, that just feels right for them. Already head coached
Mm,
once, now he's a defensive coordinator. Not a ton of buzz around him as a head coach compared to these other guys. That feels Jonathan Gannon-esque to me.
mm.
We'll see, we'll see.
Jesse
But either
Minter,
way,
Jesse Minter feels like a Falcons head coach.
yeah, there's something about that too. I just think I don't see him getting hired in Tennessee. I don't see him getting hired in Miami per se, um,
Yeah.
or any one of these other teams that needs a head coach, including one of the two teams in this next game, Damon.
Yes. Oh, this was somehow maybe even the easiest pick to make.
Yep.
Um,
Oh, no doubt,
been
no doubt.
been down on the Steelers all year. Didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. They snuck in there because the Ravens season was an absolute disaster. And this Texans team, red hot. I think winners of 10 straight coming into this game. With the defense that has just been absolutely swallowing offenses whole all year. And they did it again. They absolutely obliterated the Steelers at home, and it didn't feel like a blowout until they put up 20 plus points in the fourth quarter. It was close until then. Neither team could get a ton going on offense, which has been the Texans' problem pretty much all season. But then their defense is the opposite of what I described earlier. Most teams are our defenses kind of get worn through the game. The Texas defense just seems to accrue energy as the game progresses, and then eventually they win the battle. At least that's what it seems like. So they ended up just totally crushing them. Two defensive touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Um, One of them was a forced fumble on Aaron Rodgers. One of them was a pick six from Aaron Rodgers, I believe his last throw of the game
Correct.
and perhaps career.
Yes, we did
So
get the player retirement news. We all were kind of
mhm,
expecting after this game. A legend, spent most of his
mhm.
career in the NFC North, obviously bounced around later in his career. But yes, Steelers wide receiver Adam Thielen is retiring from the NFL. Um, Still no word on Rodgers, however. And in wide receiver news, also, Nico Collins left this game with a concussion, which is big because CJ Stroud had all the grace and coordination of a cartoon character who just stuck his hand in a jar of butter. Uh, Fumbling, like the center exchange for the Texans was broken and it led to turnovers. I want to say at least twice in this game where it was just like a bad snap, Stroud fumbles it, and then the Steelers just scoop it up. I mean, they were handing the Steelers a game that the Steelers had no excuse competing in. It was 7-6 for I want to say the whole third quarter. I mean, it was just unlike a game like Bills, Jaguars, or even to a lesser extent like Patriots, Chargers. At least was close because of some genuinely good play on both sides of the ball. This
Mhm.
just felt like, a series of foibles and errors on both sides. And then finally, it was the Texans defense who just said, "We are the best unit in this game and we will make sure you know it." And finally stepped on the Steelers' throats. And it turns out it was the swan song for previously longest tenured head coach preceding the iPhone, per an article I read this week. Mike Tomlin, who was hired before the iPhone dropped, he has stepped down as the Steelers head coach, meaning the Steelers retain his contract and rights, but Tomlin will not be their coach nor any other team's coach in 2026. And if he wanted to go to another team, he would likely have to be either fired or, much more likely, traded, as Sean Payton was when he stepped away from the Saints a few years ago before being traded to the Broncos. But a massive hole brought us up to 9 openings before John Harbaugh hired by the Giants. What do you think of this, Damon?
Yeah, I like that it was a step down. I don't know if it was mutual, if there was a little conversation. Um, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'm Mike Tomlin. You need to fire me, actually, because I quit." Like
Yeah.
one of those things. I mean, yeah, this team just can't go anywhere. I don't see how they, I don't see how he clings to relevance any longer. And it makes sense the streak of, consecutive positive winning seasons, or I guess it's now not losing seasons after the one season where he went 8-1. Um, but it was winning seasons, I think, previously to that. And I don't see how it was going to last much longer than this. I don't really see how it even lasted this long. I can see the frustrations, a lot of turnover in the recent years for the QB position. Um, yeah, take a second, take a break. That's okay. That's that's all right. You've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, definitely they exist in a very narrow band of slightly above average mediocrity. And I had heard that Tomlin went to the owner and kind of like initiated this, but either way, um, whenever he wants to return to coaching, I think there will be a lot of teams who will give him a phone call. And he, to me, feels a little like one of these, other coaches in this cycle, like, Stefanski, if he's paired with a quarterback with promise, where does that team go? If I'm a team that has a quarterback that I really like, but a coach I don't feel fully confident in, and I can just swap in Mike Tomlin and know that the defense will probably have a high floor and know that the offense can kind of be carried by the quarterback. If Cincinnati moves on from Zach Taylor, that kind of feels like it could be a great spot where Mike Tomlin just pairs with Joe Burrow for a decade and brings consistency, and Joe Burrow's talent lifts all boats on the offense, something like that. But I mean, it truly is an end of an era, I think, for fans around our age. Tomlin and Harbaugh both were mainstays alongside Bill Belichick for as long as we've been, watching football pretty much. And, Pete Carroll similarly. And now Carroll's gone, and Tomlin and Harbaugh and Belichick. And truly, we are entering kind of the new world order of the sort of fresh era, I think, of football. And I think it's kind of exciting. I think it's going to be really neat to see these names in new places and bring some freshness to a division that had some storied history.
Yeah, I can't think of many teams that would not love to have Mike Tomlin in their building, for sure. Because there's, I think people kind of clowned on the record thing, the winning record thing happening so long. Um, but there's something to it, there's something to the consistency of it, the culture. I think he's very much a culture kind of coach. Um, like the basketball comparison I would almost make is like the Miami Heat because that's their whole thing is like the culture. But it's like they're just going to consistently do the right things in the right way because that's how they do it in that organization kind of thing. And I feel like he was kind of the trendsetter for that there. Um, and a lot of teams could use that. Did not think coming into the divisional round of the 2026 NFL playoffs that Zach Taylor would be the lone NFC North coach. I mean, AFC North coach, excuse me. Left standing. Did not think that was ever going to be the case, but here we are.
Um, yeah, it's certainly crazy. Now, I do want to bring you to. I told you before we started recording, I had a little quiz for you here.
Yeah.
This is from Master Teacher 123 on Reddit. Thank you for posting
Mm.
this DraftKings graphic that gives us some nice information here. In 2022, 10 head coaches were hired.
Oh,
How
jeez.
many do you think are still with their team?
Oh, God. I couldn't even tell you the 10 code. Oh, geez. 2022. Okay. Um, well, based on the nature of the question, it's got to be like one.
It's two, so it is
Okay.
very close to one. Any chance you could name either of the two?
Um, 2022, 10 head. That's a huge coaching cycle.
It
Wow.
is massive, yeah.
Here, I just need to look at a list of the teams here. That will help me. Do you know, maybe you already know this. While I'm looking this up, I can ask you a counter question. Do you
Sure.
know who now the longest tenured head coach is?
It's oh, it's one of two guys. Is it Shanahan
It is not Shanahan.
or is it McVay?
It's not McVay.
Not Shanahan or McVay, really.
Hmm.
No one in the NFC South. No one in the NFC East. No one in the NFC West then. No one in the NFC North, I would think. No one in the AFC South. No one in the AFC East. Oh, actually no. Would it be Sean McDermott then?
It is not.
Really? Wow, that's crazy. Oh my God. Oh, I was gonna ask you this question too, because it's like, oh, all the old guys are gone except for freaking Andy Reid.
Andy
Um,
Reid is
I
kicking
totally wow.
around.
I was gonna try to get you with that question earlier this week, then I totally forgot about it. That's so funny.
um,
Oh, egg on
looking
my
at
face.
looking at the teams has not really helped me. When one of my guesses, this feels around when Nick Sirianni was hired, but I don't
And he was hired
remember.
earlier than that. I think he was 2020.
Ah, ah.
I can tell
Um,
you one of these coaches was promoted internally.
mhm.
And another one of these coaches um was not, but is considered one of the better offensive minds in the NFL now.
Interesting. I like when I look at a team and I'm like, who's their head coach?
That does hurt in this
But
game.
I'm like,
Would it help if I told
oh,
you who was
is one of them Matt LaFleur?
no?
I don't know when that guy was hired. I have no. It feels around like Mike McCarthy leaves and then he's around there, right? Kevin
Here,
O'Connell.
Kevin O'Connell's one of them. Yep. And then the other
Yes.
one was promoted internally.
S. I'm so smart. Promoted internally. Promoted internally. Promoted
It was his
internally.
second head coaching job. Is his second head coaching job.
Oh, jeez.
I did not realize. I thought this guy had been coaching his team for longer. I will say, by the way.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I'm like looking at teams and I'm like, okay, they either don't have a coach right now, their coach has been there forever, or their coach was like just hired. Those are like
Yeah.
the three things that have come to my brain as I scroll through these teams. Who is? No, that feels too like Dan Quinn hasn't been there that long, right?
No. Nope. This is second year. Was this year? So, nope.
Yeah, I was like that one feels really new to me. Um, Promoted internally. How long has Zach Taylor been the coach of the Bengals?
He was an external hire, and I think 5 years at least, because he was there when Burrow got there, I believe.
Is he really? I just really remember what's his name? Hugh
Hugh Jackson.
Hugh I was gonna say Hugh Jackson. That's Hugh Jackman. That's who I was like, that's an actor. It's Hugh
But I also don't think
Jackman.
it's Hugh Jackson. Well, hang on. Is it?
Yeah, that's the name that came to my mind, and I was like, that doesn't feel right.
No, Hugh
Is
Jackson's
it
the guy who was in Cleveland who was really bad.
oh yeah. D'Amico wasn't hired, wasn't
Was it
promoted internally,
Marvin
right?
Marvin Lewis?
Marvin Lewis is definitely who we're talking about.
Yeah. Who did you throw up as the potential name we're talking about?
I already forgot what team it was. Don't tell me it's Mr. Dan Campbell.
No. Dan Campbell was 2020
Wouldn't that be crazy?
or 2021. Yeah, I think.
I don't know, Jared. I give up. I give up.
It's Todd Bowles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But
like
yeah,
it kind of makes
because
sense once you think about it, but yeah.
yeah, it does feel like that was longer than 2022. But I guess Bruce Arians was there longer than I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of my take as well. Fired from that cycle, by the way, Texans head coach Lovie Smith, Bears Matt Eberflus, Jags Doug Peterson, Giants Brian Dable, Raiders Josh McDaniels, Saints Dennis Allen, Broncos Nat Hackett, and then Mike McDaniel for the Dolphins. So,
Oh,
uh,
Nathaniel Hackett's a goofball, man. That
crazy,
guy was
crazy.
wild.
Not as crazy as the divisional round is going to be. Let's preview this sucker. 4 games, 4 teams will leave. Who's it going to be?
Oh, brother. Well, I had an interesting thought going into this. Um, should we preview all the games first? Should we preview pick per game? What should we do?
Oh, do you want to like preview all of them and then pick them, or pick as we preview them?
Right, that was my question.
Um, let's uh let's pick as we preview them, and then we can kind of go back and
Okay,
look at totality.
the
Uh,
first game on the docket this weekend, the number six seeded Buffalo Bills coming off their win on the road in Jacksonville, going to the number one seeded Denver Broncos coming off their bye. Um, Bills will get back defensive tackle Ed Oliver is being activated from IR for this one, which is kind of a nice, that's a nice little addition right there. Before a game like this, assuming he's like, fully good to go, or whatever. How do you feel about this game, Jared? How do you feel about the Bills' chances to do another road upset here?
I would say in terms of if I had to rate my excitement level for this, it might be like the third out of fourth game. I think there's one game I care about a little less, just in terms of
Mm.
viewability. But do I like the Bills' chances? I go back and forth. We have a tendency to focus a lot on offense, but I think the defenses are going to matter. I do like Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen's the best player on either side of the ball for either team, and I think that's going to matter. The Broncos have just kind of consistently refused to lose for the most part, but coming in off of a dead week and with the Bills probably really juiced after a tight one against the Jaguars, I like their momentum. And as much as I'm worried the Broncos are going to win this game and take Josh Allen out, who's one of my favorite potential stories for a Super Bowl matchup, I don't know. I think Ed Oliver's low key huge. I think the Bills on defense that might be the weakest single unit coming into this game, but Ed Oliver is such a difference maker up the middle for a team that needs that run stopping, that he could play some key snaps. He could wreck a few key downs and potentially hold the Broncos offense enough that the Bills can surmount the Broncos defense.
Yeah. The storyline for me definitely I feel like is turning Josh Allen's kind of biggest struggle in his career against him, which is turnovers. If the Broncos really good defense can manage to turn him over a couple times, I think that will be the difference ultimately in the game. But if like the Jaguars, who were a huge turnover team all season, they didn't manage to turn him over at all. They end up losing that game. So we'll see. Based on my preseason pick of the Bills winning the Super Bowl, will pick the Bills winning on the road against another high seed. I think the Bills being a road playoff team, kind of beating a lot of higher seeds, but also like all of the higher seeds are also unproven. Like the Broncos, Patriots, and Jaguars being the top three seeds are like not teams that have been here in the past couple of years. So I think it would kind of make sense if the Bills were able to do that.
If the Bills win this game, their last playoff matchup before the Super Bowl would be against a team that they lost to at least once this year, which
Hmm.
is kind of an interesting wrinkle for these Bills. But to me, I just get this weird feeling that James Cook might give an extra dimension to the Bills' offense that the Broncos can't necessarily match on the other side. And I wonder if that might end up being the difference in this game too, is having a running back with his level of explosiveness, serving as kind of that other piece of the secret sauce offensively for the Bills, who I want to win. I'm willing to say I want the Bills to win this game. I think it sets up a more interesting AFC Championship.
Yeah. Um, James Cook's been really good too. I also wanted to shout out somebody who was a Bill and then I think wasn't a Bill for a little bit because he kind of fell off. Now he's back with the Bills and had a great wild card game. I didn't talk about it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Tre'Davious White, um, the Bills corner, was really good in that game.
Yeah, if the Rams make it to the Super Bowl against the Bills, it's going to be a Tre'Davious White bowl, and I think that's the juice the Super Bowl needs to finally get some viewership
Ah,
around here.
of course.
Yeah, can't miss narrative. If only Von Miller, well, Von Miller's not really a great person, but if only Von Miller was still on the Bills, then we'd really be setting something up.
Mm.
Um, here's a question: who did Von Miller play for this season?
Oh, I know the answer to this. Uh, maybe. Maybe I don't know the answer to this. I wanted to say the Commanders, but
It
that
is the Commanders.
okay.
Nice. Just doesn't feel real, does it?
Yeah.
Uh, Speaking of surreal, wow, another divisional matchup. Crazy to see so many of these in these playoffs, but depending on how the other games go in the respective conferences, we could end up with a divisional matchup at every level leading up to the Super Bowl, which I can't think of the last time that happened.
Hmm.
This is our divisional match of the week. Niners at Seahawks. The Seahawks being the one seed got to rest their starters. Sam Darnold questionable this week with an oblique injury, but expected to play. The Niners, actually every Niner, both current and retired, currently on the injury report.
Hmm.
Um, Sarcasm, but yeah, the Niners obviously banged up, but as we've discussed earlier in this pod episode, they have a lot of resilience on their team. Seahawks were able to get past the Niners when they played very recently.
Week 18 for the one
Yeah,
seed.
I mean, 2 weeks ago, right? The
Yeah.
battle for the one seed, the Seahawks won that game for a chance at this advantage. The question now becomes whether resting is going to further that advantage or whether getting that rest cooled them off while keeping the Niners in motion here. The Seahawks really shut them down defensively, and if that continues against the Niners, the Seahawks, I think, are going to look like maybe the strongest team on either side of the bracket as things stand. But this is sure to be an interesting matchup. Still, probably my number four in terms of overall interest, but an interesting matchup nonetheless.
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, they held the Niners to 3 points in Week 18, which of course was a game that both teams wanted to win for that number one seed. Kind of home field advantage for majority of the playoffs, the week off, etc. And if they could do that 2 weeks ago, what has changed since then? Maybe Sam Darnold's questionable injury. A little worried about their offense if he can't quite operate as he has for most of the season. Despite like 2 years in a row of this, there's still a little thing in the back of my mind. It's like, can he really do it again? Um, and then, yeah, their defense is legit, though. If they can kind of hamstring the Niners offense, which will be down, George Kittle is already down so many other players. They're not going to have a ton of options. It's going to be a lot of CMC, I would imagine. If they can kind of just put all their focus on him and then, make the Demarcus Robinsons of the world beat them. And maybe that's their formula for victory. But this game I could really see going either way in terms of who will win. Most of these games I can see that way, but this one feels maybe the most like a coin flip to me. I will stick with the Seahawks though.
Yeah, this Ricky Pearsall awakening is gonna go crazy. Yeah,
Mm,
I unfortunately I think the Seahawks not necessarily unfortunately I actually want the Seahawks to get out of the NFC. I think the Seahawks so much defensive talent. As ESPN's Ryan Clark speculated, this oblique injury could be setting up an excuse for Darnold in the playoffs. I don't think so. I think the Seahawks are too complete, and I think that's ultimately going to overwhelm a 49ers team that is losing, that's lost just too many players. Fred Warner unable to come back for this game, potentially could come back for the NFC Championship game if the Niners advance. I think they could have used any reinforcements they could get against a team that's just looked like probably the most dominant team in football over the last 6 weeks to 2 months. Though not far behind them is the road team in this next game in the AFC bracket, Dan.
yes, that would be the Texans that you're alluding to with their huge win streak now up to 11, I think, going against the two-seeded Patriots. This one is going to be interesting because it has a very similar formula to last week's game because the Chargers were pretty lackluster on offense. I think the Texans' offense has been pretty lackluster a lot of the season. The Chargers' defense did fine. The Texans' defense, I think, will do more than fine. So if the Patriots can't, turn on the Jets on the offensive end a little bit, I think there will be some worries here. Now, Texans are going to be without Nico Collins as didn't practice at all this week after suffering that concussion. But Christian Kirk was burning the Steelers in that game. They have a couple of young guys, Jaden Higgins, for example, that they can go to as well. Woody Marks was doing well for them in the ground game. So I think there are options outside of Nico Collins, and I don't think they're an offense that's like, this is our weapon. Even though he is clearly the most talented and best offensive player, it's not like everything runs through him. So I think they'll manage without him, and I think that Texans defense will be pretty scary for this Patriots offense that hasn't had a ton of pop uh, really recently at all. It's some Drake May scrambling, Drake May throwing, but there's not really standout receivers, not a ton of ground game going on. Um, Maybe a little too much Ramondre Stevenson. So I actually think the Texans defense as a unit might be like, I don't know, the best defense, the best unit and left in the playoffs, period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think my prediction will be they're going to win this game for them. They're going to pull off the upset here in Foxborough.
You make a good point that the Texans do just keep managing to find a way. And I don't know if we've seen from the Patriots a true shootout gear quite yet. And I'm not saying that this game will be one, but the fact that the Patriots, Drake May is clutch. I don't know if he has necessarily led this team to be like a truly outpouring offensively team, and in a way that I don't know. I think to your point, you made a great point. Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, Christian Kirk. I really felt going into the season they over invested in the wide receiver position, but the Texans have reaped what they've sown in terms of the depth at the wide receiver spot. And yeah, this feels like a game where, having that third or fourth wide receiver you can really count on will make a difference between two teams playing hard, and that Texans defense might throw a few looks at Drake May. That is a relatively young guy he still isn't quite ready for. So um, I'm going to pick the Texans because man, I would love my dream Super Bowl is Texans Seahawks at this point in the dance, and so I would love to see the Texans go on, and I think they just have such an overwhelming defensive identity that I think, to your point, it might just steamroll the Patriots in the end.
Here's to hope.
Here is to hope. Um,
Hmm.
I'm good
Tell us about
without
the last
Patriots
game.
Seahawks. I will.
Ah,
I will. This is my juiciest game of the week. Two offensive minds of great repute, Sean McVay, Ben Johnson, battling Rams at Bears, the Stafford led Rams, and their elite weapons pool here, like we already talked about. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum on the ground, Devontae Adams and Puka Nakua by the air. Um, they just have a really deep offense. And the Bears, obviously, with Caleb Williams throwing to Romo Dunze, DeAndre Swift, Kyle Manungai. This game feels like it could be 42-41 in a certain world, right? While I feel like the Texans have the best overall unit, I I would hazard to say that I feel maybe the most confident in the Rams and Bears to put up a really nice offensive showing and back it up with at least serviceable defense. This just feels like a game. There's a lot of fireworks potential. The Rams have won a Super Bowl in the last 5 or 6 years. The Bears, obviously, not in a long time, but either way, both of them at least feels a little unique relative to some of the other NFC teams we've seen. And I wouldn't mind either of these teams getting the chance to battle it out if you ignore the Ben Johnson factor. And so I'm just really excited for this one. I think this is the matchup that to me, besides again, not wanting the lines to look silly, it's kind of a no hard feelings game for me where um, both of these teams just have electric offensive potential that feels undeniable in a way that any of these other teams in the playoffs, it feels like I could see them having a bad week offensively. I just don't think either the Rams or Bears could go 4 full quarters without putting up a fight on a.
yeah, I think the difference for me in this game, though, will be that I do believe the Bears can go 2 quarters without doing much, as they just did against the Packers, and I don't think the Rams are a team that will let that slide. So I think they'll pull off another road win here. I just don't think the Bears can kind of get away with the inconsistency they've shown recently against a team like the Rams, who I do trust to perform basically down the stretch for the entire game.
You were right last week, so I'll fall in line. And to your point, the Rams do have kind of a runaway potential where the Packers have an efficient offense, the Rams have a punishing offense when it's clicking. And if the Bears defense is on for 4 quarters, I could see them having a chance to come back. But if both the offense and defense take a quarter off, that feels like a 17-point quarter for the Rams that would just be difficult to swallow, especially with the Rams displaying a bit of a clutch gene of their own when they needed it last week. So I don't think the Bears are going to be alone in fourth quarter heroics in these playoffs anymore. And to your point, that might be just enough. So I believe that would give us, if we were to take our predictions kind of in aggregate, that
hmm
would give us, uh,
It would give us Rams Seahawks, which was an awesome game in the regular season
yeah,
at
that
near
would be
the end.
great. And then
So,
is I guess it would be Bills at Texans because the Texans were the 5
mm,
seed.
hmm
And that game severely punished the Bills. I think if you're a Bills fan, you're probably kind of hoping the Patriots get out of that game because you've beaten them this year, and the Texans defense devoured Josh Allen's turnovers. But
yeah.
man, that would be a great, unique championship weekend. If it's Bills Texans, that guarantees that a team that's never won a Super Bowl will go on the AFC side, and that'd be
Mhm.
really awesome.
For
So,
sure.
yeah, I think we're loading up for a great potential championship weekend. And that's not to say this divisional weekend won't offer a ton for football fans as well. Let's hope it can live up to the hype that Wildcard weekend brought us for these playoffs.
And we'll be here to talk about what happened and how we were right in every prediction yet again. Um, and that'll feel so good.
Oh yeah, a Saturday and Sunday of football fun for family and friends. It's going to be electric, and we're looking forward to talking about it at some point between Tuesday and Friday of next week.
Assuming
Maybe
I don't
we
get the
hold,
flu again.
yeah,
Well,
maybe we do hold off until a little later in the week just to see if any coaching hires happen. It could totally be a
it
situation where,
it worked out this
um,
time.
yes, let us get the Harbaugh news under the wire there. I imagine if one or, if a team like the Seahawks or the Rams is eliminated, there's interest in their coordinators, and that could potentially lead to a hiring or two. So, all things to watch out for. Coaching news will continue to come. Coordinator positions will fill. Playoffs will roll on. What a great time to be a fan of the NFL, and what a great time to watch me kick a paper football. Aren't we right, Damon?
You are right. While you prepare your paper football and I prepare the goalpost, I will also mention that we will do Pro Bowl as well as All Pro. Those teams came out within the last week, as well as our own awards. Pro Bowl week in between the championships and the Super Bowl. We'll just cover it all. We'll do a whole episode just about all of the awards. So, in case you have listened to the last couple episodes and you're like, when are they going to talk about the Pro Bowl? Nobody cares about the Pro Bowl, but maybe you do care about the All Pro teams. We'll talk about those.
Yeah, if you're a Raiders fan desperate to have your team thrust back into the conversation, they likely won't necessarily be part of the all pro portion of the proceedings, but we'll have an award for every team. So,
Just
um,
geared towards Dom. Just a
yeah,
Dom comment.
this is the Dom Award. You are loved by Dom. Go Raiders. Raider Nation. All right. I'm kicking for Brandon McManus this week, which means if I miss, I don't feel too bad. And if I make it, at least
Mm.
I made a kick. There's really kind of no losing when you're pretending to be the Packers kicker and you're a Lions fan. The real
We
winners,
should
though,
no, go ahead.
no, I was going to say the real winners are the people who like, subscribe, comment, and
Mm.
engage with our
True.
content.
So say we'll probably also talk about college football at some point. The championship game's on Monday, so that's important.
Yes. Probably will be more interesting than last Monday's football game. So, if you're
Mm,
hankering for some Monday night action that is something worth talking about, even if Indiana steamrolls, it'll at least have been a national championship game and not a wild card matchup. So,
true. Uh, Here we go.
okay, lining up the kick, thinking about how the Jets might be potentially doomed by the fact that Dante Moore isn't coming out in this draft class and instead will return as Oregon's quarterback. Lining the ball up, launching, baby.
Oh, that had a nice thud sound. I have no idea what it hit, but I heard it.
I think it was the crossbar. I think it was the crossbar. That was
Oh,
low. That
oh,
was
oh, it's
low.
a low line drive. And unbelievably, the kicker has missed the extra point. It was no
Oh,
good.